families. Help us also, those of us who are here, to take the good news back to our homes and to our friends so that they also can benefit from what we have learned today. May this be our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Good afternoon, my sisters and brothers and children. You know, in Akan language, they said, "Wanton yaria, onya emu edro." And this topic is a very important topic that is plaguing most of our men and women. But in most cases, the men shift the blame to the women, not knowing that the fault is from them. Part of the fault is from them. I once remembered some years ago when I got married. You know, in Nigeria, children is business. When you marry today, you have to be pregnant tomorrow and have a child. There is no excuse for you not having children after marriage. So I remember when we had a pompous wedding with my husband. Then after one month, my auntie called me. "How are you people faring?" I said, "Auntie, we are fine." He said, "Fine for what?" "Fine for what? You and your husband, what are you doing?" So I said, "Oh, Auntie, what is it? You thought we're coming here to gather here just to be fine? You have to produce something so that we all know that the wedding is correct." So I went to my husband thinking you understand what I was going to say. So I said, this is what my auntie said, though. He said, "Am I God?" At God's own time, you will get it. So let us keep on praying. I didn't know it was in the Bible until sometime when I was reading, then I saw Rachel going to the husband, saying that if you don't give me child, I will die. And Jacob said, "Am I God?" This problem has been there. And please, if you know you have problem, ask people to help you. Don't keep it to yourself and whine about it. You will be sick, and eventually you will die. So please, those of us who have children today, let us listen and then tell our friends who are in that problem so that they can seek help. Thank you very much. At this time, I will open the floor for Dr. Maria Boa to come and talk to us.
Happy Sabbath. Happy Sabbath. Happy Sabbath. We thank God so much for the opportunity to be part of this program. I'll be happy if you can call the IT guy to help us so that we can get there. Yes. Today we want to talk about infertility, and it's become very important to talk about it because, as Mami said, children have become an issue these days, and as soon as you get married, everybody expects that you have children. In fact, it is when you get married and you realize that those who have even never prayed for you start praying that you have children. And it is something that is an issue. And for that matter, when a couple gets married and there hasn't been an issue, then family members, relatives, and relations begin to question why nothing has happened. As if when you give birth to the child, they will bring you some money to take care of the child. So in our culture as Africans, It is something that, I mean, once there's a marriage, everybody expects. In fact, I doubt if any African can go to their family and tell them that we have decided that we won't have children. I'm sure they will disown you immediately. And they'll begin to ask questions that if we decided not to have children, would you have been born to come and tell us this? So it's something that happens. And working for several years now, it is something that comes up at the clinic, and sometimes it creates a lot of problems for women. I'll give you an example. About 10 years ago, I was working in a clinic, a private hospital. I had gone to stand in for one of my teachers who had traveled, and so he asked me to run his clinic for him. And a couple came, and thank you. A couple came, and as soon as they sat down, the man spoke in Twi. He said, "My worry, but be 2 years ni untumengo." And it was very bad. You could see the woman was distracted. She was. You see that this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's been going on at home and all that. And so I told him that, is it that you are married and the two of you have not been able to have a child? Also, Dr. Media, my wife. Yes, so I took time, explained things to them, and asked them to do some lab investigations and brought it. And they brought their lab investigations. And when it came, the man had semen, but there was no sperm in the semen. And then the woman's lab results, everything was fine. And so as soon as I told them the outcome of the results, the woman just looked at the man's face like that and kept quiet. And then so we started a treatment and they went home. So they were supposed to come in 2 weeks. When they came 2 weeks' time, this time I was the woman who was talking. The man was very quiet. And so I saw them, they went. And then the following 2 weeks later, it was the woman who came alone. And she came and said, "Doctor, thank you." He said, "Now my husband does everything in the house. Apparently, the man's sisters are in the village, had all come to the house with their mother. Even some of them had marriages that they didn't even work. But they had come to the woman's house demanding that she gets pregnant or they throw her out." So when the news broke that it was the brother who was responsible, the woman told the woman that, "Well, tell your family to leave or I will go." And I think in 2-3 days' time, they all left the house. And now the man was the one responsible for everything in the house, taking care of the home, going to even the market. He used not to call, but this time when he goes to work, he calls because he was afraid that the woman will leave. The woman will leave him. I'm just saying this story because it's an issue. Another story I'll tell you was this Muslim woman who was the first wife of the husband. You know, Muslims can marry 4. The first wife of the husband. And they've been married for 8 years. They didn't have a child. And so the man married the second wife. And within 4 years, this woman had 3 children. And so obviously it was a concern for the first wife. And so the woman came. We had done every investigation, and the woman did not have any physical problem we can pinpoint, we can point a finger at. And so we wanted the husband to come. Alaji was so busy, was traveling, doesn't even have time to come and do sperm test. One day, Alaji came from US and after, because he loved the first wife so much. And so he convinced the Alaji to come and do the sperm test. Alaji came to do the sperm test. There was no sperm in the semen that was produced. So how did the second wife had all the children? Apparently what had happened was that because Alaji wanted children and he had gone to marry the second wife who was a very young girl, and at the time, you know, Muslims sometimes force marriage. And so he had a boyfriend. And so if Alaji wanted children, then they gave Alaji children. So when the second wife also got to know that this is what had gone on, the following year, the first wife came with a pregnancy. I didn't ask who was responsible for this pregnancy. I just assumed that it was Alaji who was responsible. Then I think I was Kolebu for some time. I was told she came back with a second pregnancy. Alaji has 5 children now. But he's happy. Everybody is happy. And he takes care of all the children. So who are we? You know, fertility issues are something that in our culture, something that we deal with. But we rush into it too much. When do we say somebody has infertility? We only say somebody has issues with fertility only if they are married or they've married for 1 whole year. And within the year, they live together. They have sex at least 3 times in a week. And after 1 year of the marriage, they have not been able to, the woman has not been able to conceive before we say they have fertility issues. And so if people get married and within 6 months, nothing has happened, we don't say they have fertility issues. Even if 8 months, we don't say fertility issues. It is from the time that the couple decide that we want a child, and after 1 year of that decision, when they live together and they do all the things that you're expected to do, and they have not been able to conceive, that is when we say they have fertility issues. So let's say somebody gets married, and these days it's very common. The man comes from, let's say, the States or UK. They get married, the man just stayed here for 1 month, and then he left and went to UK for 2 years. The woman has been here for 2 years. We won't say they have fertility issues. I hope you understand. Because they have not been together for all that years. So you can't say that they have fertility issues. If people get married and they decide that for the first year they are not going to get pregnant, and they stay on for 1 year without a pregnancy because they have decided that they are not going to get pregnant, after 1 year, you can't say they have fertility issues. It is from the time that they decide that from today, we want a child, and they do all the things that are expected to give them children. And after 1 year, the woman has not been able to conceive, then we say that they have problems with fertility. And there are 2 types. There's one we call the primary infertility. That one, the woman has never been pregnant in her life. And so she got married, and after 1 year of deciding that they want pregnancy, they want to get pregnant, she has not been able to get pregnant when they live together. That is primary. But secondary infertility is when the woman has been pregnant before. So somebody got pregnant when she was in school, and either she terminated the pregnancy or she had a miscarriage, and then she's grown. Now she's gotten married proper, and then after 1 year of the marriage, she has not been able to get pregnant. We say she has secondary infertility because in her lifetime, at least she's been pregnant once, irrespective of the outcome of the pregnancy. It could be that she had a miscarriage. It could be that she actually terminated the pregnancy. It could be that the pregnancy ended up in an ectopic. It could even be that she gave birth to the child and the child died later, or the child is still alive. That is secondary infertility. So primary infertility, in her lifetime, the woman has never been pregnant. And then secondary infertility, the woman has been pregnant before, but she's in a new relationship, or even with the same husband, but maybe they gave birth to the first child, and the child is 2 years. They decide that they want to have another child. And then after 1 year of that decision, when they were doing everything that they are supposed to do, and then they haven't been able to conceive, then they said, we will say that they have secondary infertility. And so if the person has never been pregnant before, it's a primary infertility. Now, why do we say we use the 1 year caveat? Because we know that for most people, in the first year, about 70% or so of people, to 80% of people will be pregnant. In fact, sometimes it's even up to 90% of couples will be pregnant. And it is only a few that will not be pregnant after 1 year. In fact, some people, even after 1 year, they will be pregnant. So first year, about 70 to 80% will be pregnant. Second year, about 80 to 90% will be pregnant. And so sometimes you need to give the people time to be together. So it is 1 year that we use. But if you are a woman and you are over 35 years, because of the age, we don't give you 1 year. Because of the age, for you, we will consider you having fertility issues if you are 35 years and above, and after 6 months. I hope this is clear. So if you are a young person, you get married, you are with your husband, you live together and do all the things you're supposed to do, and you have decided that you want a child, 1 year, if it hasn't happened, we say you have fertility issues. But if you are 35 years, the woman in particular, you are 35 years and above, and you get married and you decide that you want a child, we give you 6 months. If after 6 months you haven't been pregnant, then we will say that you have fertility issues. And the reason why we use 6 months for women who are 35 years is that naturally after 30 years, fertility goes down in women. Naturally. After 30, 35 years, natural fertility goes down. A woman who is in the womb as a baby, and your mother is pregnant with you at somewhere 5 months. If you are a female and you are in the womb, at 5 months, you have close to about 5 million eggs, even in the womb. At the time you are born, those 5 million eggs reduce to about 1 million eggs. By the time you get to puberty and you are now ready to menstruate, you now have about 400,000 eggs. And in your lifetime, you are likely to release about 500 eggs. So you see that naturally, God's desire is that every woman should get pregnant, should have a baby. So if you decide to have a baby at the time you are, let's say, 13 or 14, when you start menstruating, you have close to about 400,000 eggs. Each of those eggs can be fertilized. And in your whole lifetime, of all the menstruations and things that you have, you release about 500 of those eggs. Okay? And so, naturally, women are born fertile, naturally. That is how we'll say it. So it's about 15%, 10 to 15% of people that will have problems with fertility. So if you have about 100 people getting married, about 80-85% of them would naturally get pregnant without any difficulty. So it's only about 15% of them that will have. So when you look at the reproductive tract of women, and you see there's a woman standing, I think you can see the cursor. That is the woman standing there. And so that is the womb down here. So it is the womb that we've taken out, and we've expanded it so that we can see clearly. Have you seen that? So this is the womb. These are the ovaries. There are 2 of them. Truthfully, you need just 1, but God gave you 2. And there are 2 tubes. This is 1 tube, that is the other tube. So this is the womb, and this is the cervix. So this is the vagina. So the eggs, when the eggs are released from here or there, whichever way, then the tubes will pick the eggs, and it will pass here. Now, when you have sex, the sperms are released here into the womb, into the vagina, and then they swim up here. Some of the sperm can pass here some can pass through this side. Do you get the point? And so if the eggs are released and the tubes is like a fan, so they will just pick the egg and the egg will move through the tube. And then so the sperm tube will pass here and together they will come and meet at some point here. Fertilization will take place and about 4 or 5 days, the fertilized egg will migrate and come back into the womb and will be there and grow big. Your tummy will then become big. So that is what happens. So this is the reproductive system of women. We have the womb itself, the ovary too. So you can release the egg from the left or you can release from the right. And when the egg is released, then the tube picks it up and it comes in. This is for the woman. Then for the male, this is the reproductive tract of the male. The testis is here. The sperms are released from here. They go through this tube, come all the way behind the bladder, and then go through the prostate before it comes out as sperms. Now, if anything goes wrong from where the sperms are manufactured, through the tubes, all the way here, down there, and anything goes wrong, fertility will be hampered. Now, interestingly, the reason why the testis hangs outside the body is that sperms are produced at a temperature far lower than the body temperature. The body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius. Sperms are produced at a temperature of around 32 to 34 degrees. So if the man wears very tight panties that produce heat around the testes, what is happening? The man is actually cooking the sperms. And when they are cooked, they won't function. So the men who go to the force line and buy very tight panties and wear, producing a lot of heat, you are creating problems for yourselves. Those who drive very long distance without rest, when you sit on it, you are producing heat on the seat. For a very long time, you have a problem. Bicycle riders who ride for a very long time, you see the shape of the bicycle seat. So everything done too much, you create problems for yourself. Now, for the woman too, if you look at the womb and the way it is, if anything goes wrong here, if you have a problem that you cannot release eggs, you cannot get pregnant. If you have a problem where your tubes are blocked from infections, you also have problems with fertility. If you have a problem with even the cervix, you can also have problems with fertility. And so it is important to appreciate the reproductive tract of both the males and females. So what is required for normal fertility? What is required for normal fertility? The woman should have eggs adequately formed. The man should also have sperms adequately produced. Now, the woman should be able to release those eggs. Just forming the eggs in the ovary is not enough. The woman should be able to release the eggs. We call it ovulation. Then, when the man should also be able to release adequate sperms from the semen. The fluid that comes out from men during sex is not sperm, it's semen. The sperms are in there. I hope this is clear. So you have the fluid that comes out, and we call it the seminal fluid. The sperms are in the seminal fluid. And for the man to be fertile, each male of seminal fluid should contain at least 15 million sperms. When you say one male, the teaspoon is 2.5 mils. So when we say one male is more like almost 2/3 of a teaspoon, or let's say half of teaspoon. Let me just make it easy. Half of teaspoon. And that half of teaspoon of seminal fluid should contain 15 million of the spermatozoa. Anything less, you are likely to have fertility issues. Anything less, you are likely to have fertility issues. And so the seminal fluid should contain adequate amount of semen. Now, releasing egg at ovulation and having enough sperm is also not enough. There is a particular timing that the egg is supposed to meet the sperm. If you miss that, you will not be pregnant. And for the whole month, when the woman's eggs are released, the eggs are fertilizable, or the eggs will stay for maximum 36 hours. So if you ovulate and the egg is released within 36 hours, in fact, the best time is the first 12 hours. So if within that 36 hours, that egg that has been released does not meet a sperm, the whole month you won't be pregnant. So within the month, the woman has about 36, maximum 42 hours, 48 hours. Interestingly, the sperm is very notorious. The sperm can stay in the woman for 5 days. So the advice is that it is better that before you ovulate, you already have sperms waiting. Because the sperm can wait for 5 days. But the egg can stay for only 36 hours. So if your husband is a long-distance driver and drives from here to Tamale and come, so by the time you're ovulating, she's on the road to Tamale, she'll come back the following week. By the time she'll come, you have released the egg and it is dead and gone. And so it is possible that you'll be living with your husband, but because the sex is not properly timed, you can stay for 1 year and you won't be pregnant. And it is not because you have a problem, but it is because the timing is wrong. So there are people we have investigated, the woman has no problem, the man has no problem, but pregnancy is just not happening. And you go into the history and realize that at the time the wife is ovulating, the man might be out at work, or the woman will be out at work. And then sometimes they all live at different places. And so the woman works somewhere outside Accra and comes every 2 weeks. And so she comes in this week, next week she ovulates, she's here. The following week, by the time she goes, it's only enjoyment, no egg. And so it is not enough to have enough sperm, it is not enough to release an egg, but the meeting of those two should be properly timed before pregnancy can occur. Now, after the fertilization, the egg should be able to move from the tube, or the fertilized egg should be able to move from the tube into the womb, and that takes about 5 days. So the fertilization takes place somewhere here, and within 5 days, the fertilized egg should move from here to here. If you had some infection, the woman, that was not treated, but your immune system dealt with it, it can cause either blockage of your tubes or narrowing the tube. In fact, the tube of the woman, the space within the tube, the thickness is like a matchstick, very small. Now, if the tubes are blocked from here and here, what it means is that there's no way the sperm can pass through because it's blocked. And there's no way the egg can also pass through, but it's blocked. But if it happens that the tubes are narrowed, then it is possible that the sperm can pass through the narrow portion of the tube and go and fertilize the egg. Now, after fertilization, it becomes big. So then, on return, because the tube is narrowed, it cannot return. So the pregnancy will then stay inside the tube and develop, and that is what we call ectopic pregnancy. And then when it happens like that, obviously, we'll have to do something because the pregnancy is at the wrong side and something will have to be done. Either you are giving medication or Either you are giving medication, or you would have to have, here, or you have to have surgery to remove the pregnancy. So it is important that we take note of this. Now, after fertilization, as I said, the egg is expected to come into the cavity. Now, what causes fertility? And these statistics, I want the men to hear very well. Those who think that it is women who have problems getting pregnant, a lot of them, some of them come from men. If you take women who have not been pregnant, 100 of them, 40 of them, the problem is from the man. 40 of them, the problem is from the woman. 10 of them is either from the man or the woman, or both, or from both. In 10% of cases, you really don't know why they are not getting pregnant. And so the men who say that it is the woman who cannot give birth, please, after this lecture, change your mind. And I know a lot of the men don't want to go to the clinic because they think that fertility is a woman's issue. A lot of men these days have problems with sperm count. And we don't know whether it is the food that we are eating. We don't know whether it's the fertilizer that we use in the food. We don't know what the issue is. But increasingly, a lot more men are coming with issues, fertility issues. So they all share the blame if there are issues. And in most cases, it is better you work as a team. If you push blame on each other, then you have an even difficult task of getting pregnant. Because the issues with women with ovulation, a lot of stress on women will cause them not to ovulate. So if a woman is married, she lives at home, and there's pressure on her from everybody that she's not getting pregnant. She's not getting pregnant. In one of the house, a woman who came from Choco to Kolebu some time ago, he said they spoke in Ghana that a human being has come to this house. When somebody uses Ghana to insult you, it looks like it looks deeper than if it's tree. Because the way they will make their face and the way they will say that, you know that this is deep. He said, a human being came to this house, all the animals here have been pregnant. Human being has refused to be pregnant. How can you go, that? So, it is really an issue. Now, for the males, there are problems. What could be the cause of infertility in males? Brain pathologies. A man can have an accident and hit the head, very hard on an object. That will be the end. That could be the end. Pathologies in the brain, problems in the brain can happen. Thyroid diseases, when you see goiter in men, it can actually cause infertility. Some drugs causes infertility in men by affecting sperm production, some antifungal agents, and all that. Sometimes, some men are born without this. This is the sperm tube. We call vas difference. Some men are born without it. So the sperms are produced here, but they are stuck. They can't climb up. And so it's an issue. And sometimes, some people have varicocele and hernias and other things. We can have problems with that. Other times, it is actually heat. Heat, and as I spoke to you about, the testis is outside because sperm is produced at a temperature lower than body temperature. So if men who work in steel factories, men who work in heavy-duty factories with a lot of heat, the temperature will be so high that they cannot form sperms well. And so those ones are issues. Now, orchitis, when we were young, the guys call it tea. The cows, we call it jemerekutu. The parotid gland, it enlarges. Then your cheek becomes big. Then they use charcoal and white something to, I hope you know that. Mumps. If you get mumps as a child, you are free. You'll be spared. But if you get to puberty and you have mumps, whatever is going on here is either also going on in your testes or in your ovaries. And so those who have mumps or chitis, sometimes the mumps destroy all the seminiferous tubules, that is, the tubes that produces the sperms. Sometimes the young men, when they are playing football as kids, then somebody will hit their groin or use the ball to hit them. Their testes get swollen and taken to the hospital, giving them medication. Sometimes that is the end of it. They can function and have sex, but there is damage to the testicles. So there was an advert on TV. I used to like it, Solar Tech, protect your valuables. I used to like that advert. So you see that footballers, when they are playing for and there's a free kick, they all protect. Because if you get damage to the seminiferous tubules, you are gone. Of course, some men also have problems with ejaculation and a libido, and some men, it's even impotence. Those ones, they have fertility problems. So when you look at it, there are several causes. Other causes of infertility in men is sexually transmitted diseases, which blocks the vas deferens and cause damage to the sperms. And so these are some of the causes of fertility in men. Now for the women, there are several causes of fertility. I spoke about blocked tubes. And some of them had had also operations that cause their tubes to kink. And so they become blocked. Some people, they have abnormal uterus. The womb is abnormal. Developmental abnormality. It happens. Some people, they have what we call polycystic ovaries. They have the ovaries, but the ovaries refuse to release the eggs. And it comes with a lot of hormonal changes. And some of those hormonal changes cause the women to grow hair at places that men are supposed to grow. So they grow beard, some of them grow it in their ears, and the woman grows beard all the way to the chest. And some of them actually shave. And so when you do that, what happens is that it means there are a lot of male hormones in the system, and they could actually, affect fertility in women. Infections. Some women get infections, and they don't report it to the hospital because they believe that if you go and report that you have infection, the idea is that you are not keeping good hygiene. And so they will keep it, and the way God made it is such that your immune system will fight the infection. But if it does, it can cause blocked tubes or even narrowing of the tubes, and that can be a problem. So it is important that we take note of these things. Some people also get pregnant for fear of intimidation and other things, begin to decide to terminate the pregnancy. And they don't go to the right source for the termination. So they take drugs and all that. And then not everything comes out of the womb. So some of the remnants of the pregnancy stays in there, becomes infected, and cause damage to the lining of the womb, and also cause damage to the tubes. When they are old and they become converted Christians, then they have challenges with fertility. And so it is important that we take good care of ourselves. Now, fibroids. In most cases, fibroids, they do not cause infertility, but they contribute to it. So you could have people with huge fibroids and yet they could be pregnant. But you can have somebody with very small fibroid but has difficulties. So fibroids per se do not cause infertility, but they actually make contribution. They contribute to infertility. So when people come to the hospital, we take the history for the males. We try to look for any abnormalities in them. We try to, sometimes the testis does not descend. When you are in the womb, a male, your testis is here. Then as you grow, then it passes here, it descends all the way before it comes into the sac. There are a lot of abnormalities that can happen that sometimes the testes get locked up in the groin. And when the testes get locked up in the groin, because sperms are supposed to produce at a temperature lower than the body temperature, if the testis is stuck in the body, the temperature is higher. And so the testis is damaged. If the testis does not descend, you could easily develop cancer in the testis which has not descended. And so some of the men, the cause of infertility is that the testes are not descended. It's hanging somewhere. And so with just a simple procedure, you could actually pull it down. And then we also look at whether the man has fathered a child before or not. And then we begin to find out how often do you have sex. Some people are married, they live together, but they don't have sex. when you do that, it's likely you will not be pregnant. Even if you don't know your fertile cycle, if you have sex 3 times in a week, you are likely to, because the sperm can stay for 5 days. So if you have sex on Monday and you don't even have on Tuesday, on Wednesday, the woman ovulates and the husband is not there, the sperm could wait and fertilize. So we ask also of some toxins, any surgeries, whether they drink or smoke, because alcohol and cigarette are very toxic to the semen. And we look at the medications they have. Do they exercise and all that? Have they had any trauma, an accident that the head has hit, somewhere, or the perineum has hit somewhere? So you can see that the man is thinking how to get the wife pregnant. That is very challenging. For the woman we try to look at the development when they had their menses, how the menstrual cycle is, whether they have been on any contraceptives, have they been pregnant before, and what were the outcome of the pregnancy, have they had surgery before, what drugs is she taking as well, and also look at the exercise pattern, the weight and all that, So those ones are a challenge. People who are obese, particularly women, obesity tend to affect ovulation. And so sometimes some people, their own challenge is because they are obese. But interestingly, there are some obese women who are very fertile. And so we try to see whether your obesity is contributing to the pregnancy or not being able to get pregnant or not. So importantly, women are supposed to know their menstrual cycle. Normal cycle is between 21 to 35 days. If it is less than 21, it's too short. If it is more than 35 days, it's too long. It's a challenge. Now, averagely, most women have their cycle, and when you say your cycle length, if you start menstruating today is the first day. From today till the next time you start another menses, that is a cycle. That is different from period. The period is the period that you bleed. So that one can be anything between 3 days to 8 days. But when you talk about your cycle is the day you see blood. If you see blood today, from today till the next time you see blood, the next cycle, that is your cycle length. And it's supposed to be between 21 to 35 days. Now, in most cases, any time you ovulate, 14 days you will menstruate. If you see somebody whose menses is irregular, then it's likely she is not ovulating. But most cases, if you ovulate, 14 days after the ovulation, you will menstruate. So if you have a 28-day cycle, it means that if you ovulate on the 14th day, by the 28th day, you'll be menstruating. So somebody who has a 28-day cycle, likely to ovulate on the 14th day. If your cycle is 21 days, it means you will be ovulating on the 7th day. So those who say that, they say 14 days, if your cycle is different, the 14 days will not work for you. So 7th day, if it's a 21-day cycle, you ovulate on the 7th day, and then 14 days later, that is on the 21st day of the cycle, you ovulate. If you have a 35-day cycle, it means if you ovulate 14 days, you menstruate, it means you will be ovulating on the 21st day of the cycle, because your cycle length is 35 days. Now, if you have a fair idea of when you are ovulating, then you can also calculate your fertile period. Because it means when you ovulate, as we said, 36 hours to 48 hours, the egg can stay. So if you ovulate on the 14th day, between 14th day to 16th day, it means the egg will be around. So it means even if you had sex on the 11th day, the sperm can stay for 5 days. 11 plus 5 is 15. So it can stay. Do you get the point? So for somebody who has about 28-day cycle, roughly, I'm saying roughly, your fertile period will be, let's say, from somewhere around the 11th day to somewhere around the 18th day. I hope you get it. So because you are looking at how long the egg can stay, which is about 36 to 48 hours, and then how long the sperm can stay, which is 5 days. So if you are ovulating your 28-day cycle, and roughly you are ovulating around the 14th day, It means even if your sperms are available from day 11, by 14th day, they will still be there to fertilize. Do you get the point? And so if the sperms are available on, let's say, on day 12 or let's say day 13, it means by day 18, it is possible. And so for those who are around somewhere 28-day cycle, you are looking at anything around day 11 to somewhere day 18. If you have a 21-day cycle and you bleed for 5 days, it means as soon as your menses ends, you are already about ovulating. And so it means you have anything to do. It is within that period that you should do something. And so when the people come to the hospital, we try, in the initial stages, try to look at their cycle and see whether we can work out something for them. And in a lot of people, when you try to help them to get their fertile period, they go back home and they have sex within that fertile period, and there are no problems. Usually, they get pregnant within that period. And so it is important that if you have a challenge with fertility, you seek help. Because sometimes it is not a major problem. It is because it is wrong timing. And once you have your cycle well calculated, and then we give you a fair idea of the fertile period, and we tell you when something should happen, even if your husband is not in Accra, around the time of ovulation, you can travel because you know that within this week, something will happen. You can even arrange such that this week we will go there, this month you go there, the following month he will come. Because you know when you are most likely to be pregnant, and then you have, you meet around that period. And so when a woman has a challenge, or a man has a challenge, a couple has a challenge, and they come to the clinic, we try to find out, do certain tests. Some of the tests we do is test for the tubes to see whether the tubes are patent. The tubes are fine. And so there are tests we call laparoscopy and do HSG, as we call it, to see whether your tubes are fine. Then we can also test whether you are ovulating or you are not ovulating. Because if you are not ovulating, we can give you medications to be ovulating. So we do tests of that nature. Then we do a scan to find out whether you have fibroids or anything that has, any negative effect on fertility. And then we try to deal with it. And then we try to look at your ovarian reserves, particularly if you are 35 years and beyond. We want to see how well your follicles are functioning. After 35 years, usually we want to see. And for the man, most of the things we do is, for the man, if the man comes to the hospital and the woman will confirm that your husband can perform, then all we need from the man is if the sperm test is good, then that will be all. But sometimes getting the man to come and do just one sperm test is so difficult. It's very, very difficult. They don't want to come. So if you do the sperm test, then you have a problem. Then we go on further to look at what is causing your sperm count to be low. But if you do the sperm count and it is fine, and your wife confirms that at home you are performing, it's okay. It's okay. But for the woman, we'll check the tubes, we'll see whether she's ovulating, and we'll do tests to see whether the hormones are in place. That we do that. Now, if you come in and we do the test and realize that everything is fine, your problem is ovulation. There are drugs that we can give you to release more eggs so that you can be pregnant. If you come in and realize that sometimes you are not ovulating because there's what we call adhesions. Because of previous surgery, the tubes are kinked. Then we can do surgery to free the tubes so that the tubes can function properly. If it's a problem with the tubes, we either do surgery or you would have to find somewhere for fertility, to fertilize the egg. Because if the tubes are blocked, fertilization occurs in the tubes. So if your tubes are blocked, it means naturally fertilization cannot take place. That is where the artificial insemination issue comes in. We will talk about it very soon. And if you are male and your sperm count is not good, sometimes all you need is just a minor surgery. And then the sperm picks up. Sometimes what you need is just some few medications and the sperm pick up. And so if there are problems with the sperm, we can sort it out. If there are problems with the tubes, we can sort it out. If there are problems with ovulation, we can sort it out. Sometimes you can't deal with those problems because they've become permanent. Then you have to look for artificial means to deal with that. Now, there are some home remedies that have been known to sort of help with fertility. Like they say lemon juice helps boost the system, it improves ovulation. Vitamin E, you know the foods that contains vitamin E, vitamin C, all those things. What do you call it? Damiana tea. I've never seen it before. But it is believed that some of these natural remedies improve fertility. But if you have a problem with fertility, that is not the time to go and be drinking Damiana tea. I don't know how many gallons you will drink before you get better. So what it means is that these things should be a lifestyle issue. That even at the time that you are not married and you are not even thinking about children, you should consider taking some of these natural things to naturally help improve the system. I hope this is clear. So it's not when your tubes are blocked, then you go and eat pawpaw. You eat a whole farm, nothing will happen. So this should be part of your lifestyle. Now let's take some time and talk about assisted reproductive technology. This picture, I took it in the Women's Hospital in Michigan when they had done IVF for a woman, and she's had 5 children. And then so when they took the babies out, the nurses, parceled them nicely, and all 5 kept there, and the picture was taken. It's so nice. Now, assisted reproduction, when we say assisted, obviously what it means, assisted is English. Assisted. You need help. So any form, any method to achieve pregnancy that involve either handling the egg or the sperm or both, we call it assisted reproduction. Because in the natural sense, nobody picks the sperm. In the natural sense, nobody picks the egg. So any method that involves human beings handling sperms or eggs, we call it is assisted reproduction. Now, there are 2 main types. One we call the intrauterine insemination. So here, you deliberately pick the sperm, wash the sperm, and around the time that the woman is going to release the eggs, you actually place the sperm inside the womb so that the distance between the sperm and the egg is shorter. So I will come there. So that is intrauterine insemination. So that one, the man's sperms are collected, they are washed, they are treated nicely, and then around the time of ovulation, we put the sperm into the womb, and then they will swim to fertilize the egg. We call it intrauterine insemination. Then we call what you call in vitro fertilization. In vitro means in glass. Fertilization that occurs in a glass, in a test tube. And so if the tubes are blocked for one way or the other, then it means the fertilization cannot occur inside the tubes. And so we have to find a way to fertilize it. So what it means is that we pick the egg around the time of ovulation. We sort of harvest the egg, take the egg, and then take the sperm. Then we put it in a test tube, and the fertilization takes place. After the fertilization has taken place, then we take the fertilized egg into the womb. Remember, this thing we are doing, it was supposed to occur inside the tube. Fertilization and the movement into the womb supposed to occur inside the tube. But because the tube in most cases is not functioning, then we do the fertilization outside the tube and put the sperm, the fertilized egg inside. Now, there are a lot of ethical issues surrounding these things, and particularly for the Christian. We will talk about a few and ask ourselves some questions. We probably may not be able to answer. But what I'll try to do is I'll tell you what God's ideal is. I'm not going to judge anybody, but I'll tell you what God's ideal when it comes to artificial insemination is. Now, challenges come in. There are some people who don't have eggs. 40 years, 45 years, you do the test for their eggs, they don't have eggs. So it is possible to take somebody's egg and fertilize it with his husband's sperms and put it inside the womb. Now, there are some people too whose husbands don't have sperms, functioning sperms. But the woman has very good eggs. And so somebody donates the sperm. And it is bought. And they use the sperm to fertilize the woman's egg. And then they place inside the womb. The other one is that the sperms are not good. The eggs too are not good. But they can pick one egg. They can pick one sperm. Then they fertilize it. But the woman's womb is not even proper. So they go and put the fertilized egg in somebody else's womb. We call it surrogacy. And the person carries the baby for them. And when the woman gives birth, they go and take back their baby. All these things happen. That is why I said that there are some ethical issues when it comes to Christianity with IVF, which we will have to look at it. Now, the intrauterine insemination, as I said, here, the woman is not able to get pregnant as we want it. Sometimes, some men have what we call anti-sperm antibodies. So, some women have anti-sperm antibodies. They have certain antibodies in their system that destroys sperms anytime they meet their husbands. Some people also have antibodies that destroy the sperms in the men. So sometimes we just take the sperms, wash the sperms of all the antibodies, and then give the woman some injections to help her ovulate. Around the time of ovulation, then you go and put the sperm inside the womb to encourage fertilization. Now, the sperm, as we are saying, could be from the husband or from a donor sperm. Now, the ethical issue here is that if the woman, the sperms are not good, and the woman went to sleep with another man, we will say the woman has committed adultery. Is that not so? That's what we know. So, if the sperms are not good, the woman did not go and sleep with somebody, but she went to buy a sperm, and they fertilized it. How would you call that one? Well, because it's not the husband's sperm. I hope you get it. Please, are you getting the discussion? So this one presents ethical issues for the Christian. We will come to, as I said, what God's ideal is. So that is the intrauterine insemination. Then we have what we call the in vitro fertilization. So here, we collect the sperms, we treat the sperms, we keep the sperm in a test tube. Then we collect the woman's egg. After we've given her some medications to release eggs, we collect the eggs, and then we put the sperm and egg together in a test tube and allow them to fertilize. After the fertilization has taken place, we bring the egg and put it into the woman's womb, and she carries it as pregnancy. 4 or 5 of the eggs get fertilized. But you can't put all those eggs into the woman. So thereby you put only 2 of the fertilized eggs into the woman. What happens to the other 3? Is it not like getting pregnant and aborting because it's fertilized egg? Is it not so? So you see that it creates ethical issues for the Christian because you have your eggs which are released. A lot of them got fertilized. So because when you got pregnant and you terminate the pregnancy, we say it's what? Abortion. Is that not so? Now when you take your egg, you add sperm to it, is it not pregnancy? And so when you destroy it, is it also abortion? So it creates ethical dilemma in there, particularly for the Christian. Now the other thing is also that sometimes the man's sperm is not good, but the woman's eggs are good. So the woman brings her eggs, but because they are bent on having a child, they get donor sperms. And these days, a lot of university students are donating their sperms to the sperm banks. A lot of the women to go, they get injections, they have some of their eggs harvested, and they kept. So then they have donated sperms to fertilize the woman's egg. Now the question I asked was that, if the woman went to sleep with another man, we'll call it adultery. So if she went to buy sperms to fertilize the sperm, is it also adultery? Let me even make it severe or make it a bit dangerous. A single woman in the church who has stayed in the church and is not getting pregnant now goes and buys sperm and gets pregnant. Will the church elders disfellowship her or not? Why not? Let me continue my lecture. So, those that we do the assisted reproductive technology for are people, male infertility. People, males who don't have enough sperm. In fact, technology has gone on to such a point that even if the man doesn't have enough sperm and all he has is just a single sperm, we could actually take the wife's egg and put that single sperm into the egg for it to fertilize. It's another form of IVF. We can do that. If the woman's tubes are blocked, in most cases you will do fertility, assisted reproductive technology. If the woman is not ovulating or she has a challenge with ovulation, so she's old, sometimes even 50-year-old woman, the ovaries, the reserves are gone, we can do IVF for her to get pregnant. And some people who have genetic diseases or some people who have infertility that cannot be explained, we encourage them to have reproductive technology. Now let's talk about a few Bible principles. And it is important that Adventists, some of these things guide us. What was God's counsel to our first parents with respect to childbirth? That was Genesis chapter 1, verse 28. It says, be fruitful and what? Multiply. Be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. So what it means, and it is clear from just the first chapter of Genesis, is that infertility is really not part of God's creation as He originally made it. I hope this is clear. Because even in the first chapter, He says, after creating the man and woman, He said, be fruitful and multiply. So originally, infertility was not part of God's good creation because He says everything He created was good. He said, be fruitful and multiply. So his thing was not infertility. And so you can see that if you're able to overcome infertility, it's actually pleasing to God. And there are Bible texts to support that. And there are biblical examples. So Abraham and Sarah was there. You know, Jacob, Rahel was there. Zachariah, Elizabeth was there. Manoah and his wife. And these are things that the Bible talks about. So you see that God is actually happy when these things happen. And infertility becomes a challenge even from Bible days. So you can see that God's original plan, infertility was not really an issue. And you can even support that scientifically by the fact that when a woman is conceived, 20 weeks inside the womb, she has about 5 million eggs. At the time of birth, she has about 1 million. And by the time she's ready at puberty, she has about 400,000. And within her life cycle, she produces only 500 of those eggs. If you read Psalm 127, verse 3, children are a gift from God. Is that not so? Is that what it says? It's a heritage. So in God's plan, infertility is really not an issue. But we should ask ourselves, should our desire to get pregnant cause us to overrule God's laid down principles? We should ask ourselves that question. That even though God's plan is not for any woman to have infertility, but in our quest to get pregnant, will God forgive us if we trample on his principles? I think those are questions that as a Christian we should ask ourselves. That our quest to be pregnant, should we overlook God's principles? Now let's look at God's ideal regarding childbirth. And when we answer that, then the issue of sperm donation, egg donation, you should be able to make a decision for yourself on that respect. Now, God says that be fruitful and multiply. What it means is that it is your husband's sperm and the wife's egg. That is what originally was there. Is that not so? The husband's sperms and the wife's egg. Now, God also created sex that it could happen only in the context of pregnancy and marriage. I think that one we all agree. That God's original plan, sex was only supposed to happen in the context of marriage. Anything outside marriage, i.e., incest, rape, fornication, adultery, is actually condemned by God in his word. And this one, we are Seventh-day Adventists, we know that. I think this is clear. Now, and God's ideal, if sex was supposed to happen in the context of pregnancy, then children are also supposed to be born in the context of union between a man and a woman. And so, in God's plan, the child that comes up is supposed to be nurtured by male, the man, and then the woman. Anything outside this God's ideal, as an Adventist, you should be careful. And I have to make it clear. God's original plan, he created sex in the context of marriage. And if sex can happen in the context of marriage, then children can also be born only in the context of marriage. I'm talking about God's ideal plan. If you can't meet it, that is different. But I'm talking about the ideal. What it means is that the sperm should be the man's sperm, the egg should be the man's egg. The woman's egg, sorry. Should be the woman's egg. And the child that is born is supposed to be born into a family where the man and the woman are together, so that the child can be nurtured in the way that God wants. And what God was giving instructions to Moses, and he told them, tell the Israelites, this book of the law shall be not depart from your mouth. You should teach it to who? Your children. And so God knows that children are supposed to be born in the context of marriage, and that is anything outside this ideal. As a Christian, you should be careful. Now, what is the Bible stand on artificial insemination? The Bible is not against artificial insemination, but it creates that it should happen within the bounds of the fidelity and permanence of marriage. So if I've gotten married and I'm having challenges with my wife, my tubes are blocked and we can't get pregnant. If they take my egg and they take my husband's sperm and they fertilize it, and in the process, I'm not going to throw away any fertilized eggs. And it is going to be implanted with my husband's sperm and my egg into my womb. In the context of God's ideal, there's no problem. I hope this is clear. So if there is artificial insemination, because my tubes are blocked, because my husband's sperms are not good, so naturally we are having difficulty to get pregnant. So we go for artificial insemination, or we go for artificial reproductive technology. And the process, it is my husband's sperm I'm using. It is my egg that I'm using. And I'm ensuring that no more than the eggs I need to fertilize, I need to get pregnant, are used. And so there's no damage to any of the fertilized egg. It is acceptable. I think this one is clear to everybody. So, there are no biblical concerns if only the sperm and egg of the married couple are involved, or the fertilized eggs are not intentionally lost or destroyed, then there are no biblical concerns. Now, the challenge is the use of third parties, such as donor sperms, donor eggs, and surrogates, present a challenge to the Christian, and therefore its consideration should be done very cautiously. Now, what happens is that I have some patients, the woman has a challenge, she cannot get pregnant. And so, but she wants a child. And so they've taken her eggs and has been fertilized. And the resulting fertilized egg has been placed in the little sister's womb. And the little sister is carrying the pregnancy for them. Is it right or wrong? Is it right or wrong? So what I came here to tell you is God's ideal. I cannot judge people by the things they do. But what I know is that, and what the Bible recommends, is that these things should be done within the bounds of the fidelity and permanence of marriage. So if you're a Christian and you're taking donated eggs, think through it. Am I looking at God's ideal? If you are taking sperms donated by another man through masturbation or so, obviously, think through it. Now, that is the dilemma. Does God approve sperm or egg donation? Surrogacy. Taking your eggs, fertilizing it, and putting in another person's womb to be carried. Does God approve it? Single individuals who undergo some form of artificial technology, reproductive technology to obtain a child. Does God approve it? Now, these days, gay couples use surrogacy. It happens. They use surrogacy. Eggs are harvested, sperms are harvested, and then they go. Sometimes they even go to the sperm bank and egg bank and buy the eggs and sperms. If you have 2,000 even in Ghana, you can get sperm donation. So the thing is, two single Christians. I gave this scenario. One is so poor, but he wants a child. So he goes and sleep with another man and gets pregnant. The other single Christian is so rich that she didn't go and sleep with any man, but she went to the sperm bank and bought sperms and got pregnant. The two of them are pregnant in the church. Osofo, how is the church going to deal with that? What I have to say is this. Our desire to have a child should not cause us to deviate from God's ideal. We should be very careful. If somebody also trips and goes that way, our attitude should be person, we should judge the person carefully. We desire that people should follow God's ideal. That is the best. Now, somebody will say that it is not everybody. Yes, God wants everybody as much as possible to get pregnant. But in the Bible times, it's not everybody who gave birth. I was told that Peter had a wife, but we never heard that Peter had a child. Maybe Pastor later on can throw light on this. We've told that Peter had a wife, even before he came to follow Jesus. But we never heard that Peter had a child. So yes, it is good. God wants people to get, but if people decide that they don't want to get pregnant, I think that they can decide that. If that is what is going to help them worship God well and do what is right, I think we should allow them. Now, if you decide to have a child, as much as possible, and we advised that look at the way of God, your decision to have a child should not cause you to trample on God's laid down principles. It may be a challenge. But my advice is also that if somebody cannot contain himself as a church, and it comes out like that, our attitude towards that person should not be that of rejection. Our attitude to that person should not be that of rejection. If you have suffered infertility before, because of infertility issues, some people will lose heaven. Because the things that infertility will cause them to do, So we should be very careful in judging people on these matters. But my advice is that we should always look at God's ideal. I have seen people who had come to me and they have refused to do any form of artificial insemination. Just last 2 weeks, somebody came. I've been married for 6 or 8 years. She had refused. The man had refused. The woman had said the man had refused. Just last 2 weeks, pregnancy test was positive. And I've seen people too who have refused and still they are still infertile. They are not gotten pregnant. God is the ultimate, and that should be our focus. Our quest to have a child should not cause us to trample upon God's laid down principles. If it should happen in that way, the church attitude, as I say, should not be that of rejection. Of course, if natural and artificial means fail, what happens? Adoption. And so some people have children they cannot take care of. You could pick some and take care of them. Just as the poor will always be with us, there will be the people who cannot give birth, they will always be with us. There will also be people who cannot control themselves. They will give birth, they can't take care of them. But they also become our responsibility as a nation, as individuals, and as a church. And therefore, if you're a couple and you have difficulty getting pregnant, and sometimes you don't want to be caught up in this IVF dilemma that lets you know whether you are going against God or not, your sure bet is also to adopt a child. Now let's remember that motherhood is a gift, or children are a gift for God. Interestingly, if it's a gift, he decides when he wants to give it and how he wants to give it. If I want to give you a gift, you won't tell me when I should give you. I will decide when you appreciate it most. Is that not so? And it happened in the Bible. So you see that in the Bible, all the people who gave birth under strange circumstances, they are their children we now count. After Samuel, Hannah had several children. Tell me their names. Tell me their names. Do you get the point? So I mean, we should look at it critically. Let's know that God has his way of dealing with his children. Thank you very much. So I think they made some room for some questions and some contributions, and we'll take them. Yes, also for coming. Yes. Yes. Asafo, thank you. So any questions? I think that is why the mic is here. So if you can please come in, come and just give your... Yes. Sorry. Please, can you take the sanitizer so that you actually take it round, you spray the hand, and then give it to them so that they don't... Check the mic for her, please. Yes.
There were these two people, a man and a woman. They've been courting for some time. And then just before they said they wanted to get together, they said they wanted to go and do some tests. And in the process, when they did the test, the man said he likes children and he doesn't want to fornicate, so he can't marry the woman because the woman would never get a child. So, Pastor, Doctor, is it necessary for us to do those tests before we get married so that we don't go about fornicating or having outside issues?
Thank you very much. I will go the biblical way. You see, Mommy, please have a seat. Thank you. You can do some tests and see whether you are fertile or not. Let's not reduce marriage to childbirth alone. And I see these things a lot. In fact, it has caused a lot of people to go against God's will that get pregnant first even before I get married. We get married. Yes, you can do some tests. And I've seen a man who has some low sperm count and didn't do anything about the sperm count. You got your wife pregnant. Do you get the point? And so you might do the test only to find out that, oh, the sperm test, instead of 15 million, is 14 million. Does it mean he can't get a woman pregnant? That is not so. In fact, I don't advise that people should do fertility tests before they get married. Personally, I don't. Before marriage, you can do tests that determine compatibility in terms of you can do HIV, you can do sickle cell, because those ones will guide you in the marriage. But when it comes to fertility, the tests are invasive. When you say invasive, like the woman will have to lie down, we have to put things in your vagina and do all sorts of things. For somebody who is not married, I don't encourage that. But if you get married and after 1 year of trying, you have issues, we will do that. So I don't encourage people doing fertility tests before they get married. I encourage people to do general well-being tests that deals with their general well-being. But fertility, I don't encourage that because it can create problems. The thing is that we shouldn't also limit God to machines. We shouldn't limit God to machines. Even the test for the tube, we use to test the tubes. It has a false positive rate of about 15%. So you can have 100 people going to do the test. 15 of them, they will say their tubes are blocked, but generally, their tubes are not blocked. So because the machine is not perfect, the machine should not decide who gets pregnant, who gets married or not. When you do that, we are limiting God to machines. But, you know, Makanim Renchi played a song. Or see GDA Kasa Fidie Eden. So you see that there are things that test will say is this. And I've seen some before. In Laboni S.D.A church. I won't mention the name. We did all the tests. They said the tubes are blocked. The woman has 3 children now. We did all the tests. They said the tubes are blocked. But she has 3 now. In fact, after the 3rd one, I said, tie my tubes. I don't want to go again. I said, see you. So we shouldn't limit God. So my advice is, before pregnancy, general well-being test is good, but not specifically fertility test before pregnancy. Yes. Yes, sir.
my question is this. We are talking of God's ideal plan. I do agree. If you are a doctor and somebody has this issue, and you are a Christian, and he comes, and you also know that this is God's ideal plan, and he's insisting, is it right for you, also knowing that you are a Christian, to do it because for you, you are a doctor? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me give you a scenario that maybe will help explain. If you go to the doctor, and the doctor is a Jehovah's Witness, and he doesn't take blood, and your child needs blood, and the doctor says, because I'm Jehovah's Witness, I won't give your child blood, how would you feel? What the doctor believes in doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You can go to a doctor who is an atheist, doesn't even know what God is, doesn't care about what God is. He's a professional. The decision is with you, the JSS friends, your SS friends, your people come in and say that, Charlie, I've gotten a woman pregnant. Terminate the pregnancy for me. I don't do termination. So I will try to talk you out of it and talk to the woman. He says he wouldn't do termination. I want it. If somebody comes to me with hypertension and I don't treat hypertension, what do? I say, go to the reproductive health clinic. The decision is not mine. You have decided that you want to terminate your pregnancy. So you go to the reproductive health unit and talk to them. So if you come to me, it is not about what my beliefs are. The decision is yours. You, the one coming to do it, that decision is yours. So if you come to me and as a doctor, I'll give you all the options that are available to you as a doctor. In fact, if I hide anything from you, I'm actually liable. But the fact that I give you the options rests with you to decide whether what you are going to do is consistent with your faith. Please, I hope you get me. So what the doctors believe in these matters doesn't really matter. You can advise, you can tell the person the pros and cons, and even the ethical issues. You can even go ahead, if the person is a Christian, bring in all these other issues. But don't be seen to be telling the person what to go and do. That decision rests with the doctor, with the patient, the individual. She should decide. Because I can go and then somebody will tell me that, oh, Saturday way there, orthodox medicine, doctor do I should decide whether I want to go to the herbalist or not. So the doctor can even suggest, but I can say, I don't want it. Because when I look at this, it's not something that I believe in. So in most of these matters, it is you, the person involved, whose decision is paramount. The doctor's responsibility is to lay all the cards in front of you. If you make a choice, then the doctor will tell you the implications of the choice you have made. If you decide to go with it, that's okay. When somebody comes to me and says, I want to terminate a pregnancy, I talk to the person, I try to look at all so many things, even tell you that people had come, they have issues with pregnancy. If you have gotten some, it's a blessing. Your age might be an issue, blah, 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 blah. The person says, still, I want it. Okay. Give yourself a week or two and come back. Think over it. Doctor, after you've talked to me, I've decided I'll keep it. I've won. I'm happy. But the person comes and says, look, I have thought about it. This one, dear. I don't know. He said, well, unfortunately for you, I don't terminate a pregnancy. So please go to the reproductive health clinic. Sometimes some of the people, when I tell them go to the reproductive health, because so you advise the person, sometimes you bring in a bit of it, your faith a bit of it. But the decision rests with the person. Now, in counseling people in the consulting room, sometimes people think that when you are a Christian and sit in the consulting room, everything you do is Christianity. Everything, yes. It's good, but you have to be very careful. You can be sued or something can happen. So you have to introduce it carefully. Guess what? If your child goes to an atheist, and you see that in the consulting room, the atheist is trying to infuse ideas because he's a doctor, that his beliefs on your child, how would you feel? Will you be happy? No. So you see, if you're a Christian, sometimes you talk to the person, you look, once you realize that the person is a Christian, you hate there. If the person is not a Christian, you are careful with how you introduce your Christian beliefs. It doesn't sound as if you are imposing your beliefs on the person. So that...
I have 5 questions.
It's their day. Please allow them.
Yes. The first one has to do with, you never mentioned sex style. Sex style.
Positions do not necessarily cause people not to get pregnant. It may contribute, but not fully responsible for people's difficulty in getting pregnant.
Okay. All right. So the third one is alcohol intake. You spoke about drugs and then alcohol. I have few friends at the office who take Smirnoff and other little percentage. Of what quantity can actually affect your fertility?
Bob Marley smoked weed and played all the songs that even some Adventists enjoy. He never went mad. But Kwaku Frimpong went to puff one for the assembly. He went mad. Is that not so? So you see, the amount of alcohol that can cause damage in one individual, you can't determine. Some people, just a small amount can create problems for them. Some people today will drink it and it's not a problem. So you can't determine quantity. If it is not good, it is not good.
Okay. All right. Now with the new abnormal, the LGBTQ, whatever, we have the T, the transgender. So the man decides to become a woman, or a woman decides to become a man. With their system, you know that now they have changed their whole system. How easy or difficult will it be for them to give birth? Yeah.
We are not supposed to talk too much about these transgender people, but the truth is that it is abnormal. It doesn't fit God's norm. And this answer is not respect to you. It doesn't fit God. I get a bit irritated when we see it discussing. This is not something we should be talking about. Have you seen 2 goats, male goats, or dogs, 2 male dogs? And then these other issues of transgender people thinking that they are males, they become females. They are females, they become males. If you are a male and you decide that you want to be a female, there are stages. Like, let me use the female. If the female thinks that it's a male, for the transgender people, there are stages. They take them through it and they start giving them female hormones. Start giving them male hormones. So that because they feel they are males, they start giving them male hormones. At some point in time, when they are giving them the male hormones, some people actually go to the extent of removing their ovaries because they feel they are males. If they remove your ovary, then your ability to be fertile is taken off. So you can't. Now, for some of them they call it medical castration. They don't remove the ovaries, all right, but they give them drugs that suppress the activity of the ovaries. In those cases, too, they cannot be pregnant. Do you get the point? But some of the transgender people, this one says I'm a male, this one says I'm a female. So the male becomes a female, the female becomes a male. The truth is that the one who has become a female still has eggs. Do you get the point? So they could actually take some of the eggs and do surrogacy in another woman's and they can have a child. It has made this thing so weird. Do you get the point? And people who are pushing all these things are also making sure that they put in place systems that can still make them have children. So for the transgender, there is a very clear way, some strange ways of going through to get them a child. But in most cases, they use surrogacy.
Okay, so with ergonomics, posture, lifting of items, how to sit, if you drive in, what effects will it have on your fertility, being a man or a woman?
Well, it depends on the stress levels. If you sit, if you take things and all that, in most cases, doesn't have much effect on, but it put a lot of stress on the system. Stress has effect on ovulation. Stress have effect on especially sperm function. And so any form of stress, whether physical stress, emotional stress, psychological stress, will not cause infertility per se, but it might contribute to it. I hope you get it. It will not cause it, but it might contribute to it because it has effect on sperm function and function of the ovaries as well.
Okay, but is there a particular lining behind your waist? Because I heard someone saying, "Usisi ahomate, untime wo." Yes.
There's nothing like that.
Okay.
There's nothing
Right,
like
so
that.
the very final one is after childbirth, if someone has given birth before, what measures should be put in place for the person to become fertile, still fertile?
Oh, fertility has to do with if you don't have any problems with your tubes, you don't have any problem with ovulation and all that, then general well-being, good lifestyle, exercising, a lot of fruits and a lot of vegetables, drinking a lot of water, being active, being happy, all these things help boost the system. Interestingly, these are things that the Adventists teach, but we don't practice. And that is very painful. When you hear Ohiniba on radio talking blah, 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 reading Adventist books and making money out of our books, we ourselves sit here and we don't do it. The biblical principles are the standard. There is enough in the Bible to keep us safe, both physically, emotionally, mentally, and everything. Our safeguard is the Bible. If you go to it, we are cool. We might not even take medicines. So this afternoon, I invite us back into the Bible. Yes.
Okay, my question is ART 100%? And if a couple decides to do IVF for their first, let's say first delivery, the second one, can they have a normal childbirth, or they still have to go through?
IVF is not 100%. In fact, the success rate in most IVF circles is between 25 to 30%. And the money involved sometimes is huge. It can cost anything between 20,000 to 50,000 Ghana cedis per cycle. If you lose it, you've lost your money. And so IVF is not 100%. The percent is about 1/3 possibility. Now, the other question you asked was, which one is that? Yes. After IVF, you can have. In fact, some people after IVF have challenges with pregnancy, but after going through IVF cycles, their system is psyched up, and then their system can pick up. So yes, after IVF, depending on what caused your infertility. If it's a problem with your tubes, which is blocked completely, then obviously it won't come up. But if it is an unexplained cause, nobody knew it, but it was just not happening, and some artificial procedures, you got pregnant, your system can come back. And people have had normal pregnancies after the IVF procedures. I saw a hand somewhere. Yes, she's there. Let's let her ask.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation.
Yes.
About the ethical issues you raised. So there were a number of them I agreed with you. For some, I wanted some clarification. Now, you stated that children are a gift from God, and that sometimes in our quest for children, we may deviate out of God's path. Now, I agree 100%, except that sometimes I also think that as Christians, we impose burdens which God has not imposed on us. Mm-hmm. Now, science can be tricky, and the lines can be blurred, and it's not always black and white. Mm-hmm. Now, in my legal profession, 3 people can do the same thing, and yet the human law is saying your act alone is not enough to make you criminally liable unless the intention, you have to act with what we call the actus reus and mensura. The prohibited state of mind must coincide with the act. So an act alone without the mindset is not enough. Now, I'm not saying I want to borrow, okay, I want to borrow that into this argument. I have sex, I want to rid myself of the pregnancy and avoid the shame and all that, and then I have an abortion. I want to do IVF, it's very expensive, I've struggled to get some money, and I don't want to do too many ones, so maybe then, like you said, make sure you don't discard some of the eggs. But then, as a safety precaution, I want to see how many of them can fertilize. Maybe now there are 4. And then I said, okay, then insert 2. Now, for me as a legal person, one has the menstrual of abortion. The second one, who is doing the IVF, does not have the menstrual of abortion. Now, correct me because I will think that way. And then again, when we say children are a gift from God, for us couples who don't have fertility issues, the pastors will tell you, God will give it to you when He's ready. Take your time. But for us who can give birth, we do family planning. I want to give birth in year 2. I want to have 1 child. I want to have 2 children. I can only take care of 1. So we decide for God what we want. Now, are there ethical issues with that as well, family planning? Finally, the one about a woman who may want to have a child and is not getting married and wants to, say, get a sperm donor. There is an introduction of a third party. But how about if I'm a single lady of 40 and I decide to adopt a child? Now, the issue you hear mostly for the one who wants to get sperm donation is that these things must happen within the context of marriage. So must I be married to adopt a child? Now, we are quick to go for the adoption. Will I not say I'm borrowing the same principle? I'm going to take someone else's child. This one is my egg and someone else's sperm for my child. I'm not married. The unmarried woman who has an adopted child perhaps may not be chastised and given this lecture of is not in the context of marriage. What about the single one who hasn't committed fornication but has gone for sperm donation? Would you want to clarify?
Yes. It's good when you bring some of these arguments. What I presented was the Bible's position, God's ideal. And it is not me who's saying it. That is what it's clear. And I also said, if you remember, that I don't have an answer. If somebody decides that I will go and sleep with another man and get pregnant, and we say it's adultery, clearly. But the person who decides that I want to go and get a sperm donor without the act, without going to actually physically sleep with the person, what is the sin? Is it the act that is sinful, or is it the sperm that I'm getting that is sinful? I'm not trying to answer that. What I'm saying is that this is what the Bible prescribes. And this is what it says. And everything in the Bible, that is what it talks about. This is the ideal. I am not prepared to judge somebody who decides that because of ABC, I want to go and do this. Our ideas as Christians, or what we intend to do as Christians, is that we meet what God expects us to meet. But I said that when it comes to fertility issues, we shouldn't be quick to judge. You can rationalize it all the way that you want. The Bible still stands. That is what it says. Like your question, I'm not prepared to say this is legal, or this is this, or this is that. There are some of the things that in the Bible that you will bring our current legal issues to come and explain. You even dispute what is in the Bible. And so I'm not going on that path. I'm an Adventist. I want to stay within the confines of the things that has been introduced to me as an Adventist. I'm not also prepared to judge people who feel that because of ABC, they want to do this one. My advice is, as much as possible, we're encouraged to meet God's ideal. If somebody falls out of it, if you remember, I used my words carefully. I said that we should be careful the way we judge the person. Our action, our attitude should not be that of rejection. I hope you remember that. So that is what I will say. I mean, as for the argument, if you go even into Adventist website, I know that what Pastor has shared, there are very blurred lines. Blurred lines. Organ donation, we take kidneys, we take liver, we take what? Why don't we take eggs? Why is it that the egg then becomes adultery if I go and take a donor egg? Because Adventist is not against organ donation. And I'm sure what Pastor shared, I've seen that general conference commentary on that. It's not against organ donation. But why is it that when it is egg, we want to look at it as adultery? So the lines are not clear-cut. The lines are not clear. And in fact, with the current issues, it is very difficult sometimes to call somebody to the church board to say that because the ABC you have done, we are going to sanction you for that. That's why I'm saying that if that happens, our advice should be people to try and meet God's ideal. But if somebody deviates from that ideal, our attitude should not be that of rejection. I hope you understand. For the argument, yes, the lines are blurred, but I want to just present what I can speak to.
We have one question from an elder online, and he wants to find out what effect does high heels have on getting pregnant? What effects does high heels, wearing high heels, have on getting pregnant?
High heels cause waist pains. That's what I know. I don't think it causes infertility. It causes waist pains, and it can cause you to break your leg and all that. But I am not sure it has any direct relationship with, and our elders in the past, if they want us to not do certain things, they attach to certain things that will prevent us from doing it. They say when you are bathing, don't sink, you invite ghosts. What is it? Is that soap will enter your mouth. So keep quiet. So they say, if they don't want you to wear high heels, they say if you wear high heels, you won't get pregnant. So that you will be afraid to go and do that. So some of those things are, I don't know whether we call them myths or I don't know how we called it, but there are things in order to get us not to do certain things that the elders find unacceptable. Yes, ma'am.
Please, is it true that during menstruation, the doctor can advise both couple to have sex because that is when the ovulation is?
So there are some people, Mom, if you remember, I said that there are some people, when you ovulate, somewhere 14 days, you menstruate. Some people have a 21-day cycle, and the woman bleeds for 8 days. So the woman is ovulating around the 7th day. But around that time, there's some bleeding. Do you get the point? When it comes to fertility issues, there are so many. So then what will happen is that, okay, so the Bible says if a woman is menstruating, don't have sex with her. Do you get the point? So where do we stand? So sometimes it is calculation of the fertile period that sometimes brings some of these things into bear. I won't be surprised if a doctor had actually advised somebody to do that, maybe based on the cycle that the woman had had.
Let me kindly make a statement on what my sister just said. The Bible says it takes a man and a woman to bring a child to the world. But the same Bible says in the latter days, knowledge shall increase. And with the knowledge increase, we have this in vitro and all that. I've had cases in my ministry where somebody went for a sperm, a single lady who thinks that she's aging and had a child. And the church sanctioned her. Why? Because where's your husband? Even though you use technology to get a child, but ideally, as he said, there should be a husband to do the act. You don't have, but you have a child. So in as much as we want to go with technology, let us also be careful not to go against God's word. Fortunately, I have not seen it anywhere in Scripture that says when we get to heaven, the number of children you have will determine how close you sit by Christ. For me, our focus should be how to please him. I'm reminded of Matthew 6:33, which is still valid. Seek ye first the kingdom and its righteousness, and all these things will be added. As long as the Lord sees that when I give this girl, when I give this guy a child, they will be able to take care of the child. No matter how old you become, the Lord will give it to you. He is the only one who can perform miracles. I have seen 50, 60 years give birth in ministry because he works with and by time. So let us not allow anybody to put pressure on us. You are aging. You've been married for 4 years. When are you giving birth? That kind of pressure has over the years put church members into certain situations that are not godly. And now, even among us, some people are having sex outside marriage and thinking, bringing it into the marital home, making their husband responsible. Meanwhile, they are not responsible. We have all those cases. My statement is simply this. If God sees that you, when I give you children, you'll be able to take care of them, it will not prevent you from making it to the kingdom. The purpose for which I brought you to this earth, you'll be able to fulfill it. He will give it to you when it is time. But if you go against his word, the consequences will be dire. Let us stay within the circle of his will. That's what I would say. Thank you.
So what we are saying is that doing IVF is not sin, but as much as possible, try to do it in the context of God's will. I think that is what I would want to say. You have something? Yes.
When Pastor was talking about the 50-year thing, 50, 60 people who have given birth, then it's always been one of my worries. Sometimes when we make the altar call for people who want children, you could see sometimes a very old woman. Now you see, God also uses signs. If God tells you this is proper diet, don't eat anyhow and expect him to perform a miracle of your body dysfunction. So you are 50 years, you are 55. Medically, we are being told of the risks that are attendant with having a child in that period. And yet the person is still expecting God to do the miracle. So as I sit there, I'm like, adopt and be free. But then again, I haven't gone through it, so I cannot understand. And that's why I said in the beginning, it's not about what, I know what God's ideals are. But even in my very young life, I realized that it's not always black and white. There are so many gray areas. It's so dicey, and especially when you don't have to go through it. My second concern has to do with the statements you made about fertility, checkups for your fertility when you are not married. Now, for most of us now, we marry late. People marry 35, 36. They get married and they are told they had an issue that has spanned for like 3, 4 years. And now the general teaching around this, because we don't marry early, maybe when you are in your 20s, be concerned about your fertility. Don't wait and say, I'll start doing fertility things when I get married. And then you get married at 38, and perhaps if you had done fertility checks around 32, there's a condition you have at that time that you could have remedied and still had children smoothly. So, I mean...
The point is that the question was, do you do investigations to find out whether you can have a child or not? And that, I still insist, is not necessary. As a young person, begin to live lives that will preserve your fertility. So what is the idea of that? So we go and do the test. I realize that you don't ovulate. What do I do? So I won't marry you. Is that what you are saying? The fact that the person cannot ovulate does not mean the person cannot have a child. And so we should be very careful, because the infertility investigations, as I said, are invasive. You lie down, you put a speculum in your vagina, put a tube through for somebody who is not married. Do you get the point? So as a young person, I like your statement. Be concerned about your fertility. Be concerned about your diet. Be concerned about exercise. Be concerned about the way you deal with sex when you are not married, because it has implications for your future fertility. Those are things that are important. But if you are not married, and I saw people, the other time I saw somebody in my consulting room, he says, the man says I should come and test whether I can have a child before he marries me. That is not the best. Meanwhile, the man has not come to check his sperm test. So,
in relation to that, sorry,
yes,
but in relation
that's fine.
to that, if, for example, the gentleman had accidents before the marriage or in his youthful days and doctors declare that he's never going to have a child, and then probably the lady also has had some experiences where doctors have pronounced that she's never going to have a child, and they know, and the two of them decide not to tell each other, and they go into the marriage. How about that? I think that there should be some disclosure somewhere.
Well, you see, that is why we're saying that, and pastors do it well, that before marriage, there is counseling. If you know you are impotent, you can't function, at the end we talk, and then you go and you get married. That marriage is not consummated. I'm sure the church has something to do with that. I mean, if the thing is not functioning, and the man didn't disclose it, and the woman goes, you lied. I mean, it cannot stand. So it is important, if you've had an accident, and you have been told, or some women, like about 2 months ago, a young lady of 18 went to terminate the pregnancy and perforated the uterus, and the uterus was necrotic. So you have to do a hysterectomy and remove the uterus.
That means the rest of her life.
Yes, you don't have a womb.
So when I meet such a lady, and the lady does not do disclosure.
Yes.
What happens when we get into the marriage?
Well, Pastor,
and yes, the case these days, some of the ladies and gentlemen who are preparing for marriage will not even come for counseling. You see that?
So that is different from doing fertility test. The woman, it behoves on the woman to tell the one I'm going to marry that this is my challenge, this is a problem I have. The fact that somebody is going to lie and get somebody to marry her does not mean that everybody should be subjected to fertility tests before they get married. The tests are invasive. The tests are invasive. And the fact is also that some of the issues that we pick up when you do infertility test does not necessarily mean that it will lead to infertility. So you do a sperm test, the man is expected to have 15 million sperms per male of semen. And the man has 14 million. It's low. So what should the woman do? No, what should the woman do? So you should say that because the man's sperm is low, you should either boost it or the marriage will not come on. It is not the best. It is not the best. And it is dangerous when we go on that path. And that is why people feel that go and do the test. I see that if you can get pregnant before I get married. In fact, people have carried it to the next level, to the point that now get pregnant before in fact, in one of the weddings, while the pastor was praying, the woman had to go out and vomit and come. What is that? What is that? So it is those gradual things. So it is good to keep yourself well, because as a woman, you know that you have children, and so your eating, your attitude, the way you do your things, stay in your lane and do things in that is good. But when it comes to tests for fertility, they are invasive. And you don't have to do that for somebody you are not married to. And in any case, it does not mean that you cannot get pregnant. Get married, try getting pregnant. If you have issues, we'll deal with that. But if you know before the marriage you have an issue, you disclose it. And not surprises, only to find out that this is what had happened, and now no. Yes, Obani. Well, this is the last one, and then we can. Okay, there's the last one.
Can I find this out? For how long can one have his sperm or the eggs stored? I know there is a certain period, but I just want to know about how many. Is it 2 years, 5 years? Because these days there are people who are not getting married, and they feel that their biological clock is ticking, and therefore they want to remove and store their eggs, and for how long can that, be stored? Thank you.
It depends on the integrity of the eggs. When the eggs are frozen, you can even store it over 10 years. It depends on the integrity of the egg that has been harvested. And so those things are also coming up, that people feel that they are growing, and so they are losing it. So they take some of their eggs and store, and then when at the time they are ready to have children or they get married, it's too late. Then the egg still remains fresh, and they can use it. As long as it's their egg and it's their husband's sperm, I think biblically we don't have any concerns.
Okay, thank you very much. Mine is kind of a testimony and maybe some advice also. We're married, that's my wife there, Ruth. We're married for like 6 years before we had our first child. Yes. Oh, okay. We're married for 6 years before we had our first child. And at a point we went and the doctor said we should do the IVF. And it was the last time we saw the doctor. I think it was in the same year we had our child. She's the only one though. But I think she's a blessing. No, I know she's a blessing. And the fact is that if you wait and you trust God, it will come. We did all that we had to do, checked everything, and we were okay, but it was still not happening. Okay? So if we went ahead to do IVF or anything, my advice is that the child you're going to produce, you're not too certain that that is what God was going to give you. Because the sperm that is picked is not what God would have chosen. So if you are giving any pressure, if you are giving any whatever, I think that as a man, and I'll say this to the men, as a man, stand with your wife. Okay, probably we were lucky we didn't have
And as a woman, stand with your husband.
The women, I hardly hear the pressure coming from the men's side, like the man is impotent. It's usually the women that we say are barren. And so I think that the men should stand by their, well, it passes that way also, but the men should stand with their wives. There's an issue that I'm discussing with a friend now. They are both Adventists, they are not getting any issues, and they are even threatening the woman. As to whether the man is the fault or not, nobody cares. We are always pushing the blame on the women. And so as a church and as men, let's stand with our wives so that we will not have issues. You may let her go. And if the fault is with you, the next person you go for, no magic will bring you a child or the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So what we are saying is not that IVF is bad, and I still want to make it clear. There are some people who will benefit from it. If you are young, it's not an issue. You could wait, especially when nothing has been found with you. But let's say if your tubes are blocked, completely blocked by all the tests, then sometimes it's very difficult to say that, yes, there's a possibility that it might work, but especially when a biological clock is ticking, and you can do the IVF again in the context of what God recommends, I think you can go for it.
Yeah. Doc, I've been asked by the women and the young ladies ministry to say thank you for your time and for this excellent lecture. In fact, for the first time, I've learned much more. And I've added a lot of information to the information I have about this. The district wants to say thank you, and we hope that the next time when we call you, you're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for coming. We thought that the entire district will be here, but I hear there are some programs somewhere, so they couldn't make it. But those of us who came, God richly bless you. One thing Doc said, I want to reiterate that. Let us not judge anyone who decides to use technology to have a child. It is between them and their God. Let us pray that in God's own time, He will visit those who are looking for the fruit of the womb. May God richly bless each one of us. And Mrs., thank you for coming to support Doc. God bless you for coming. And the children, yeah, I see them here. God bless you for coming with Daddy and Mommy. We are grateful. God richly bless you. Yeah.
I'm sure we all enjoyed this program. And we will take it as an exercise to tell our friends. I was expecting some of our young girls who are having those problems to come, but unfortunately, none of them appeared.
Some are here. Don't
Those I know. And the Jesus, when you are sick and you don't tell anybody, you won't get medicine for your sickness. I don't say go about telling people who will take your thing around, but choose somebody who will direct you to the right path, or even go to the extent of looking for some doctors for you to help you. And as we have listened to this, try to disseminate the information to those who think that they are having those problems, so that we can be happy in our church instead of going round, going to pastors for praying for me, and go and get the devil to bring into your house. May the Lord bless us as we continue to do his will. Thank you very much for coming. Let us sing, blessed be the child that binds. 103. Oh God, oh God, our help in ages past. The first answer. And then we'll ask Pastor to pray for us.
Please, let's rise. Anybody to give us the tune 103, oh God, our help in ages past. Oh God, our help in ages past, our hope for years to come, our shelter from the stormy blast, and our eternal hope. We are praying. Holy Father, we want you respectfully to bless Doctor and his family. We want you to enlarge their coast. We want you to give them all the protection and the guidance they need. We pray that the heart desires of the family, O Lord, grant it to them. We prayed for more wisdom for your son, so that you continue to share these messages in all our churches with people, so that those who need it will benefit from it. We cannot pay him. Please reward him for the time he has spent with us. We commit the entire congregation into your hands. Father, please meet the needs of those who need this topic we discussed. Visit them, and in your own time grant them children. Those in your own wisdom, they are not supposed to have children. Grant them contentment and let them be happy in their life, waiting the second coming of Christ. As we leave here, Father, take us to our various destinations. In your own time, bring us to your house again tomorrow evening to continue the 10 days fasting and prayer. I pray, as you ask Aaron to pronounce the blessings, please bless your people as they leave. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift out his countenance upon each one of us and grant us his peace. We ask in Jesus' name with thanksgiving. Amen.